Hey guys, welcome back to my 162 tutorial series. So tonight we're going to be taking a look at command line arguments. And so command line arguments are things that you'll be using not only in 162, most certainly for the first lab, probably for your first assignment, but you'll also use them, I believe, in data structures and also in algorithms, and they're just a good thing to kind of be aware of. The syntax for using these you'll often see if you go and look at tutorials or kind of help resources online, so just good to be aware of. So command line arguments. What are command line arguments? That's probably the first thing that we want to talk about. So here, over on my left-hand side here on the screen, I've got a very basic, very simple Hello World C++ program. Hopefully this is familiar to all of you by now. And then over here on the right, I've got my terminal. So again, also hopefully that's familiar to all of you. And so let's say that I've got this Hello World program and I want to compile and run it. So I've got it saved. So I'm going to come over here to my terminal and I'm going to type G++, and then I'll type the name of the file. I forget what it is, but I think it's the only file in here. Okay, it's hello.cpp. So when I compile this program, it will create something called a.out. That's this green executable right here, a.out. So if I want to run that program, and as most of you are probably familiar with doing, I can just type a.out right here. And what this actually is, a.out is what we would call a command line argument. An argument being information that we are providing, and command line being the place that we're typing our command, right? So a.out is information that I'm providing. It's the name of the program that I'm running, and I'm putting it on the command line. I'm commanding it to run my program called a.out. So when I hit this, you'll see that it says Hello World. But a cool thing to know is that I don't just have to give this only the name a.out. I can actually put in additional information here that my program can use. So I can enter additional command line arguments, or I can enter additional pieces of information on the command line that my program can access. And so I can separate them with a space, and so here I can come in and I can add extra things. So I could add in the word hello, for example, or I could add in the number 14, or I could type Oregon State. Oh, that's not how we spell state. Oregon State. I could add all sorts of things. And then when I run this, it's not going to do anything with those. It's still just going to run my program. But somewhere, we're actually storing these pieces of information. All right? So these are additional command line arguments. This word hello, this number 14, and then the words, or I guess the single word Oregon State here, the string Oregon State. Those are all command line arguments. So we can use these in our program to do various things. And so it's another way to take information in. You all are probably used to using something like cin to get information from a user. This is just another way to do that. So let's take a look at how. I'm going to come in here to our program. I'll actually blow this up a little bit so you guys can see that a little bit better. I'll maybe try to make both of these a little bit bigger. Move these over a bit. So the first thing that I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to add a couple things up here to main. So this should be a fairly relatively familiar looking main to all of you. And I'm going to add in a couple new things. So the first thing that I'm going to add in is something called int argc. All right? And what this is going to do is this integer called argc is going to store the number of command line arguments that I have. So if I clear this out, and again, if I type in a.out and then I type in, okay, apparently I can't type in a.out, and then I type in something like 14, and then I type in hello, and then maybe I type my name Matthew. All right? How many command line arguments do I have here? Well, I have the first one, a.out. I've got the second one, 14. I've got the third one, hello, and then I've got the fourth one, my name, Matthew. So I've got 4 command line arguments, and that's what argc is going to store for us. So now let's say that I come down here, and let's take a look at that, all right? So if I come down here and I do a cout, and I say the number of command line arguments is argc, Okay, let's see what this does. And so let's break this down here just a second. I'll maybe do an inline here. So argc is the variable that holds how many separate space-separated command line arguments, how many different things I've put onto this command line, all right? So I've created this integer variable called argc, and that is what I'm printing out here. It's a parameter taken into main. There's some stuff kind of built under the hood here. But let's go ahead and I've saved this, so I'm going to go ahead and compile my program. Yeah, it takes 2 arguments. That's fine. We should still be able to see it. And then let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So if I just run a.out like I'm familiar with, I can see that I have 1 command line argument. What's that command line argument? It's a.out. What happens if I type a.out and then my name? Now I've got 2. Something that might be useful for you is to take in perhaps a number. In Lab 1, you're going to be asked to take in a number that you can create an array based off of. You can size an array based off of. So if I put the number 15 in here, there we go. We can see now I've got a.out as my first argument and 15 as my second argument. And that's great. But how do we actually use those? So that's the next part of this that I want to take a look at. So now here comes the next part. I'm going to say char star argv array. Don't worry too much if this looks a little bit cryptic or this looks a little weird. Basically what this is saying is I am creating an array of C-style strings. Remember, C-style strings are just arrays of characters. That's really what all strings are. It's just some of them have some extra nice stuff built in, all right? So what this thing right here will do, I am creating an array of C-style strings, and the array's name is called argv. So that means anything that I put on my command line will be stored in an array. So, for example, if I type a.out, that's going to be stored in my first index of the array, or at index 0. If I type in my name, Matthew, that'll be stored in the second spot in the array, or at index 1. If I type in if I type in the number 15, that's going to be the third argument, or the second index. Hopefully we're seeing a pattern and remembering that we're off by 1 here, right? So those different things will be stored, those different arguments will be stored here in this argv variable, and we can access them in our program. 1 second. Beer break, because I'm not getting paid to do this, so it's fine to drink beer while we learn things. Yay. So what I want to go in here and do is actually access this information that I'm putting into the command line, all right? And I'm going to go ahead and just make a simple loop that will go through however many command line arguments that I have and print that information out. So maybe this will be review for some of you. This might be new if you're new to C++, but I'm going to create a for loop down here. And in my for loop, I'm going to create a new integer called I and set it equal to 0. And I want to run this until I'm out of command line arguments. So if I have 3 command line arguments, I want to go 0, 1, and 2 for index 0, 1, and 2. Where can I get that number? Where can I get the number of command line arguments I have? Right here from argc, right? We just looked at that. So I'm going to run this for loop while my I is less than argc, while I still have arguments coming in from the command line. And then I'm going to go ahead and increment I by 1 each time. We'll actually do this. All right, so I'm going to come down here, and here's what I'm going to do. I just want to print out each of these different command line arguments, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see out each single one of these command line arguments. And so to do that, I'm going to use argv, because again, argv, this second thing, is where we have stored our command line arguments. And remember, I said that argv is an array, right? So I can't just see out argv. Doesn't work that way. If I do, I'm going to get an address, and if that doesn't make sense, don't worry too much about it. But I'm going to see out argv, and I'm actually going to see out argv, again, since it's an array, I need to see out it at an index, right? So which index do I want to put in here? Well, I could put 0, but that's going to give me the first index every time. I could put argc, but that's going to give me something that I don't want. That's actually going to go out of bounds. What I really want to print is each single thing that I've put into the command line, right? So I want to print out every element of this array. And that means I'm going to want to print out every element from 0 to 1 minus the size. And when I say 1 minus the size, my size is in this case, if I look over here, my size was 3. So I want to go from 0 to 1 to 2. So I'm going to put I in here because I is what iterates from 0 to 1 to 2. All right, hopefully that's a review. But if not, there's a quick crash course just on printing stuff out from an array. Okay, so this for loop will go through and print out every single command line argument that I have. And let's take a look and see if I'm actually right about that. Okay, so I'll go over here and I'm going to go ahead and compile my program again. And then I'm going to run it first just with a.out. So I've got one single command line argument, and we can see that it was a.out. And now if I do a.out again, but maybe this time I put in my name and I put in 15, now I'm going to see that I have 3 command line arguments. The first one was a.out, the second one was my name, and the third one was 15. Okay? So just a quick crash course on how command line arguments work. Again, this isn't meant to be super comprehensive, but hopefully just a supplement to some of the other stuff that you guys will be able to find either in class or out there on the web. But that's how we access extra information that's coming in from this command line. argc is how many different things we have, and argv is an array that stores that. Now, just a quick note before we end off the video here. Every single command line argument that comes in will by default be stored as a C-style string, which means if I were to run this program, over here this 15 isn't getting stored as an integer 15. It's getting stored as a C-style string 15. So that means something like this, right? This kind of a 15 right here. Not this kind of a 15, like that, which means that I need to convert it if I want to use it for something like accessing an array, or if I want to add it, if I want to do 15 plus something, like 15 plus 2 to get 17, if I want it to act like arithmetic, I need to convert it into an integer. So hopefully that is something that you are familiar with, and we might talk about that as we go over the first lab. But that's just something else to note, that everything that comes from the command line will by default be a C-style string. So hopefully that gives you a decent crash course into how command line arguments work, to where you might feel comfortable starting to use those in your programs or your labs. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.